So in San Francisco last year, the city's elected leaders voted to slash its affordable housing requirements in half temporarily. Leaders said the city needed more housing, especially with the new housing requirements placed on them by the state, similar ones placed on Santa Cruz. And so the decision was based on data to help spur more housing development. Frank, I know your side has argued the 25% affordability mark proposed by Measure M was inspired by a 2022 Planning Commission recommendation. It wasn't just plucked out of thin air. But what analysis have you looked at that makes you certain that a 25% affordability requirement would work in Santa Cruz and not stymie development?
Well, our provision applies only to the large projects of 30 units and above. And all of those projects will qualify for a density bonus. It's a state density bonus law. It allows developers to go 1, 2, or even 3 stories higher than the existing zoning, and all the units in those additional floors are all market rate. So what happens when you have 20 or 25% affordability? It gets watered down. So under the current regime of 20% affordability, it gets watered down to about 11 to 13%. And that's the net that happens with the density bonus. So what by bumping it up to 25%, we're basically bumping that 11% up to 16%. So really, it's not going to be a huge amount of affordable housing. Really, it's nothing close to what we need, but it's better. It's 5% better.
Right but where have you seen this work? Where do you base your certainty that something like this will work? Now, 5% bump. That's not nothing. That is considerable in housing development. There's a lot of costs on development already. Why are you so confident that this will work and not backfire and stall development?
Well, the people who proposed it on the Planning Commission are housing experts. So they have expertise in this. They are the ones who proposed this, and we're just like letting it. Never got to the city council for a vote, so we're letting the voters decide.
And on the Planning Commission, they do focus on housing a lot. There was the Kaiser Marston report that Don had mentioned. They would also consider themselves housing experts. They do this kind of stuff in 37 jurisdictions across California. They said that this wouldn't be feasible, so I just would like you to both talk about that conclusion. We can start with Don, since Frank's had the mic for a little bit. And is this something we should trust, this Kaiser Marston report?
Of course, I believe it is, but I want to I'm going to refer back to something that I passed out to the folks at the table about Frank said under the current regime. Well, under the current regime, which I just mentioned earlier, we've seen a dramatic slowdown in construction or completion of housing units at 20%. So on what basis would we think, if we go to 25, we'll get more housing production? Quite the opposite. It's just another nail in the coffin of our being able to do this. Now, the other piece I want to mention, the density bonus is important. It's a very important thing. It's very complicated for most of us to understand every detail. But one thing that is absolutely clear is that places like San Francisco, who just did that lowering that you referred to, they have the density bonus law just like we do. And even with that density bonus law, they found that their 25% was too high, and they had to bring it down. That's exactly what we're facing. And we're going to, we can't afford to wait and see if this works, because most of the evidence, in fact, all the evidence, most of the opinions and all of the evidence suggests that 25% is too high. Communities are not adopting 25%. That's just because they know it isn't going to work for building housing. And this isn't just some abstract idea. These, people are looking for housing in this community every day, hundreds and hundreds of people. And we can't slow this down so that 100 more of our kids will move away and 100 more employees in the restaurant industry move away right when we need our families and our businesses to survive.
Frank.
San Francisco is an interesting case. They just went through a huge crash in their tech worker population. The entire downtown is cleared out. People have left for Tahoe, for Santa Cruz, for other places. They don't have to work in San Francisco anymore. So that is a situation where they decided that they could lower that temporarily, as I heard people saying. That's true. For Santa Cruz, one of the reasons that there's been an apparent slowdown, it's not really a slowdown, is that interest rates are so high right now, so that some of the construction is being held off until interest rates come down, which they are starting to. And I did just a cursory look at the city's website, and there's over 1,000 units that have been approved or are starting construction or just about to be approved in like 8 or 10 big projects that are under that 20% regime that you're saying didn't produce any housing. So it's happening. It just is slowing down. There has been a slowdown due to the interest rates and also COVID.
Frank, but so you said the people on the planning commission are housing experts. What about this Kaiser Marston report that says, they have these pro formas that they look at. Their whole business model is based off of knowing the real estate industry. They said that this 25% would not work in Santa Cruz.
Well, I would trust what City Council member Sandy Brown had to say about this, and she basically dismissed the conclusions of the report, noting that the models that they use are based on developer assertions. Basically, this is what developers say they need, so we're going to trust what they, that's not based on any actual economic evidence. That's according to Sandy Brown. And she noted that we are in a very unique situation here in Santa Cruz where we have the biggest economic engine in the world right over the hill, 40 minutes away. And we're one of the top beach towns in the world, really. And so that situation creates an enormous demand here, and the normal law of supply and demand doesn't work in this situation.
You have anything to say to that, Don?
Wow. Let me start with the last thing. So I just went online to look around at some places for rent that aren't brand new. Apartment buildings downtown like 1010 Pacific. And they're offering huge rent reductions for people who will move in there right now.
It's better.
And isn't that, now why is that? It's because at the higher rent, they weren't getting enough people to rent them. But now if they lower the rent, now some more people will move in there. I believe that's a function of what's called the law of supply and demand, which Frank says doesn't operate here, but I do want to assure you it does. That housing costs when people won't pay the high price and stuff stays vacant, the price goes down and then more people will move in. That's the law of supply and demand.
What were the prices?
At that place it was $3,000.
For a one bedroom.
Right. And see, this is another piece that I think is so important to talk about. There are so many people in this community who have middle income jobs who want an apartment and would pay $3,000 a month for it. You may go, oh my God, they can't do it. But they do, and they want to, and what they do instead is they live in Salinas or Watsonville because they can't find a place here. That's what, going back to that chart, what happens when we build only 6,500 units, but we have 22,000 more people here. We can't keep doing this. We have to build the housing.
Thanks, Don. All right, so Frank, and you just said this, that the laws of supply and demand don't really apply to Santa Cruz because we're such a desirable place to live. What other option do you see in Santa Cruz to lower housing costs for everyone besides rapidly building more housing?
And I forgot to mention that the demand side is that you have these high-tech workers that make a lot of money. The average or the median wage at Google is $280,000 a year. That's the median. So half the people at Google make more than that. And of course, you're going to want to live in Santa Cruz if you're a Google employee. You have 3 buses every weekday morning going from Santa Cruz to their HQ in Mountain View. You got 2 double-decker buses coming back each night. And it's just very easy for them. I mean, why would I live as a tech worker, why would I live in Cupertino when I can be in Santa Cruz, work from home 3 days a week, go into the office a couple days a week on the bus? It's very easy, and $4,000 a month for a one bedroom, no problem for my $280,000, a year wage. Anyway, so
Yeah, so what other option do you see in Santa Cruz to lower housing costs for everyone besides rapidly building more housing?
Well, I think we're going to be rapidly building more housing under existing zoning. There's room for 8,364 units under existing zoning, according to the city's analysis. So,
In earlier cities analysis, the state approved the 5,000 number in the range of 5,000 to 6,000.
It's still thousands more than what
Yeah.
we need for the next round of state mandate. So, I think that we're going to be building a lot of housing, and if we make it so that 25% of those units have to be affordable to people who live here, make normal wages, it's going to increase the amount of affordable housing over not doing that.
Okay. Yeah.
I want to recognize Frank is a planner, and so that was a really important planning concept that he talked about. But I do want to remind everyone that when we plan or designate sites for 5,000 units, that doesn't mean they get built. That's just an opportunity site in our community, and we need those. That's a first step. But if the people who actually build the housing say, crap, I can't make it work if I have to do 25% affordable, I guess I'm just not going to build. And then we get nothing. And that is the problem with the 25%, is that 25% of nothing is nothing. And that is a problem. We can't do that anymore. We've already shown, Frank is right that there are a lot of projects in the pipeline, but most of the ones you see around here that are going up and happening, yeah, great, housing, those were all applied for when the inclusionary percentage was 15. That's a number that builders can work with. 20 has been more problematic, 25 is a disaster.
Okay, so why heights? Why make height go the way of new taxes and elected officials in the sense that we need a citywide election to approve them? Is this good? Is it bad? Why is it good or bad? Frank, you could start.
People are shocked about some of the things that are, some of the buildings that are going up now. Take the example of the Pacific and Laurel, the huge 6-story building that people, saw that and freaked out. And just imagine twice that tall, and then not just one building, but 29 acres of twice that tall, over on the other side of Laurel. So that's what they're proposing, and we're saying let's step back, let's let the voters have a say in this. A lot of us want the Warriors to stay. I personally want the Warriors to stay. I think that we should find a way for them to be able to stay with maybe 8-story buildings and a nice new arena. I would vote for that. A lot of people would vote for that. But I don't think people are going to be happy about 12-story buildings without a vote. And that's just the beginning. That is just the beginning of what is going to happen if Measure M fails. It's going to be, the gates will be wide open to the next thing will be 15 stories. Next after that, it'll be 20 stories. So it's going to really change Santa Cruz. I think a lot of people are saying, let's just step back, let the voters have a say in the matter. Let the voters, voice their concerns. And if 50% plus one want to do it, that'll happen. It's a majority rule.
And the city, I think, has said that the plan is for only a couple or 3 buildings to be up to 12 stories. It's not do you not trust that? Or
they haven't said anything. All they've said is that it is 12 stories. They won't even say how many feet that is. So it could be, 180 feet, at 15 feet per story, or it could be, 130 feet. We don't know. They haven't specified the locations or the numbers or the height in feet.
And so, Don, height, direct democracy, good or bad?
So I do want to just comment on what Frank just said, that he's absolutely right. We don't know the plan there yet. That's absolutely correct. And so in the absence of an actual plan, the supporters of Measure M go, it might be 27 stories, it could be 14, it could be 29 acres, it could be 2 acres. But we don't know that, and yet we're being sold Measure M as though we do. And that's a fundamental flaw of Measure M, is that it's all based on a fear that something might happen. But democracy has many different ways it could work, and a different way it could work is we could wait and see the concrete proposal that's going to be made for that area. And if people don't like it, we can fight it out at the city council. And then if it doesn't work there, then we can put it on the ballot. Right now, we're saying,
Excuse me, sorry, please.
Thank you for being so polite. I've interrupted you a lot, haven't I?
All right, let's keep it on stage, please. All right. Thank you.
If this is a vote, Measure M is saying, let's have a vote to have a vote. If we want democracy, let's have a vote on a specific situation that is going to happen. Measure M could have said, let's just have a height limit of 8 stories south of Laurel. Could have said that. And then that would have been the real issue. That's what most of the people in this room, I believe, are most concerned about. And yet, that isn't what the measure says. It says all throughout the city, on all development projects, we're going to have a vote. Why do we? Yes, it does. It does on all development projects that require a zoning or a general plan change. You say it's very few, but a lot of other analysis shows that, as one prominent analyst said, it would be every year we'd be doing this. And see, and there you go, you're just going, no, but where's your expert evidence that that's not correct, Frank? Where is it?
Everything that's being built now is under existing zoning. So, even like the food bin one, that is existing zoning. So we're talking about things that go above that.
Right.
Okay, so that is when you need a vote under Measure M.
And I actually want to just ask about the food bin development. This is something, and Frank, you said, in your intro that Measure M is not going to push development out to outlying neighborhoods. And in conversations I have with Don, this food bin development on Mission, and I don't know who's paid attention to this, it's a 5-story, 59 units mixed-use development. Food bin will be on the first floor, and then stories of housing on top. That's much taller than anything that is currently on Mission. Do you not think that the development pressure will move towards areas like Mission, and we'll start seeing more developments like that on the city's corridors? And do you like the food bin development, and do you want to see more of those? Because and why wouldn't Measure M
No, I don't
enforce
like that particular development at all. But that is already in the existing zoning, and there's nothing we can do about that. State law prohibits you from downzoning, so we have to live with that type of development along the corridors, and it's already zoned for that. So there's no pushing it. It's going to be happening regardless. There's going to be, in certain areas, there's going to be projects like that, and there's nothing that we can do about it because of the state regulations. What we can do with Measure M is make it so that if they want to go up above that level, if they want to do 12 stories at the food bin or that type of location, that would require a vote of the people.
Don, food bin development, do you like it? Do you think that we'll see more of these if Measure M passes? What are you thinking?
So I'd say, excuse me, I'm sorry. Yes, I do think that there will be more of those, and it goes to that same point I was making a moment ago about the difference between designating sites and having plans versus what actually gets built. So if you create a situation downtown, especially where there's a push, which I do support, for more height, and we resist that, which is I think what Measure M is about, then where will we actually get projects built? They will be built on Mission Street, they'll be built on Soquel, Ocean Street, Water Street, those kinds of places. And that's exactly why I think it's best to reject Measure M so that we really put our emphasis on taller buildings downtown. That is the best place to have taller buildings in our community.
It's already 6 to 8 stories in most of the places downtown south of Laurel. That's under existing zoning. That's plenty tall. And there's a couple places in the traditional downtown where they could go to 10 or even more stories with the density bonus. So there's going to be a lot of taller buildings downtown and south of Laurel under existing zoning. We're just saying if they want to do double that height, they want to go to 12, 15, 20 stories, that there be a vote before that happens.
Sorry, Frank, I just wanted to jump in there. Do you not think that having a development like the downtown expansion plan and taller buildings and dense development will not remove pressure? So there are fewer projects along Mission and that are
That's not how
stories?
it works. There's no pressures. It's already zoned. The corridors are already zoned for developments like the food bin. Unfortunately, with the density bonus, you're gonna have 5, 6-story buildings and with zero parking. That's just state law. There's nothing that can be done about that, and there's no pressure that would increase that. It's already it's baked into the zoning. So if a landowner wants to do that and they have a developer to do it, they can do it now.
Okay. All right. I want to move on. I want to ask a question about builder's remedy. This is a term that's been thrown around a lot. So the state is asking Santa Cruz to build 3,736 new housing units by 2031. That's 5 times as many as Santa Cruz was told to permit between 2015 and 2023. The state has new teeth in making sure communities are building this housing that they're requiring. None sharper than builder's remedy, according to a lot of folks. If the state sees that local regulations are slowing housing production in a community, the state can impose builder's remedy and essentially begin rubber stamping local projects with no consideration for local zoning or design standards. Now, there is a fear that, and it's down the line, but there is a fear nonetheless that the restrictions measure imposes upon development could slow production, housing production, down enough for the state to come in with builder's remedy. Now, Don, is this a legitimate concern? I mean, Santa Cruz has been so good about building housing. They're a very housing-forward community. They've been recognized by the state. Would the state really come down on this community so hard?
We are doing better than most communities. I really agree with that. So it means that it's less likely, but if we fail, we fail. They're not going to go, oh, you were good, 7 years ago, so even though you're messing up now, we'll give you a free pass. That's not how it works. So if the builder's remedy kicks in, then it kicks in, and we lose. And if we aren't meeting our housing goals, we'll lose even more local control than we've lost already. And then I do want to mention another piece of that, which is we're also, in addition to the builder's remedy function, that is a factor here. We have been designated as a pro-housing community because we do have a good record in the recent past on housing. Now, that's really important because one of the best ways to get more affordable housing, and I bet we agree on this, is when we have subsidized 100% affordable projects. The way we do those is when we get state funding for those. That's pretty much doesn't happen unless you get state funding. If you lose your pro-housing designation, which things like Measure M, and not just Measure M, just things that we do that slow production, we lose our pro-housing designation, we lose our opportunity to get that state funding for 100% affordable housing. So there's a lot at risk here.